go Data Brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? Bitch boy Millsy. Back to the Hometown Commander. Back for another episode of Millsy Updates, the show where I take you through my most recent updates for the decks in my main or test box and just bring you along on my more personal brewing journey instead of the brewing journey that we do every day on the channel. Today we're finishing up my second week of updates talking about Ovika, Enigma, Goliath. This deck is a deck that took me by storm and absolutely loving it. That's not a pun on it being a storm deck. It's just the truth. It's not a storm deck, but it's just a deck I absolutely love. For a long time I've been chasing a spell-slinging deck that really feels like me, that isn't just a gamey deck that just tries to storm out or combo out. What I love about Ovika is, well, we'll rate its ability, and then I'll tell you what I love about it. Flying, ward 3, and pay 3 life, so very hard to target. 7 mana, 6/6. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create X 1/1 red Phyrexian Goblin creature tokens, where X is that mana value of that spell. They gain haste until end of turn. And this is what I love about Ovika. A card that pays you off for playing non-creature spells and gives you tokens for your privileges. Yes, unsurprising to the viewers that know me well, this is another tokens deck. But it's a tokens deck that mixes with spell-slinging, and that's what I love the most. So to kind of talk into what we're going to talk about, what I've tried to focus the deck on as well. First off, spell-slinging, it's a thing. It's Izzet spells. You know what it's going to be at. But there's two things that I've really kind of tried to do with the deck. One, treasures are so prevalent these days in Magic, and the cool part about a lot of the treasure cards is they're at the situationally right part of the curve for us to help curve up to Ovika and allow us to get access to her maybe a turn or two earlier and then be able to have more fun with it that way. And also they can just fund our crazy ideas that we have. We're playing a little bit of the pingers you'd expect for as far as creatures entering the battlefield. And then we're going to talk about kind of how I want to deal with damage, because at the end of the day we want to use those goblins with haste to deal combat damage to our opponents to win the game. But let's talk about treasures, right? The idea for adding the treasures of this deck really came from the Goliath deck that I was playing with for a little bit. And I realized that, well, at a certain point, we're really wanting to play instants and sorceries. A lot of our decks, big mana spells, are instants and sorceries. You know, we're not talking about things like Treasure Cruise or Dig Through Time, but they are instant sorceries, so we can actually tap our treasures for mana with Goliath. But Brass's Bounty, making a treasure equal to each land you control and getting us 7 gobos. Hit the Motherlode, 7 goblins, discovering and getting us a bunch of extra treasures. These are cards where their mana value matters and what they give us matters. This is the thing I had to learn with Ovika, was you're not just looking at this, you're looking at the mana value as well. And I'm willing to play Hit the Motherlode, even though some people may not feel like this is a very good card. 7 goblins off the bat, and then this ability is a very different way to look at a card in this deck versus other decks. But the cards that really, I think, shine for this strategy are these draw spells. Pirate's Pillage, Seize the Spoils, Big Score, Unexpected Windfall. These red draw spells where you pitch a card, draw 2, and then make 1 or 2 treasures depending on the spell is important, because if I do this on turn 3, right? Let's say I have 3 lands and a mana rock, so I do this on turn 3, I pitch a card, draw 2, make 2 treasures. I now up to 6 mana, and all I need to do is drop 1 more land, and I could potentially have Ovika on 4 or 5, depending on where our curve shows up. And that's what I think the important part, because we needed Ovika to do it. Prismara Command can do something very similar just for the draw. And then Rain of Riches is one of my favorites to play on like turn 4, because we're almost guaranteed. If we can play Rain of Riches on turn 4, we're guaranteed Ovika on turn 5, because it comes in, makes 2 treasures, and then when we cast Ovika the next turn, it cascades, meaning we're going to hit something else pretty good. The only downside to that cascade, when you cast Ovika right, is Ovika won't see the spell, but that's okay. Rain of Riches is a great card, and thankfully I got that reprint in the Thunder Junction Commander deck. I didn't realize how many cards I really needed from that deck that I got to put in. As far as the damage on creatures going in, it's something I care about. You know, I'm playing Perforos and I'm playing Impact Tremors, but it's not something I'm writing home about. Like, it's not something that I'm focusing the entire deck on, but it's something that if you can get it, feels really good. Same thing with something like City on Fire. City on Fire plays a dual role of buffing these types of abilities. Same thing with something like Goblin Bombardment, which I just didn't show, but we play as well to be able to sack them to deal damage to an opponent. But City on Fire is going to help them in combat and make them even harder to deal with. And I think that's where this deck transitions from just spell-slinging to being a threat. But let's talk about our spell-slinging type cards. I have loved Balmor in this deck ever since I put it in there. Balmor makes a ton of sense. When we get into our cards for the future, you'll understand another card I'm going to add. But basically, it gives you a pseudo prowess, but it gives them trample, which is the important part. Like if I have all these 1/1 goblins and I cast 2 or 3 spells and they become 3/1s, well, our opponents can just chump block them. But if they become 4 or 5/1s with trample, now they're harder to deal with, right? Now they have more of a threat. Stormkiln is just getting us a treasure every time we cast or copy an instant or sorcery. Again, great. We do have some ways that we'll talk about on the next slide for copying spells. So it is important that we have some of that payoff. Veyran is really great because it doubles up Ovika's trigger, which is beautiful. And then Veyran can become a threat in its own right, depending on how many spells you cast in a turn. Mizzix's Mastery and Arcane Bombardment are kind of like my little package of just taking advantage of all these spells we're casting. Arcane Bombardment still remains one of my favorite spell-slinging payoffs of all time, and I will happily play it in every deck that I can justify it in. Thousand Year Storm feels really great with Arcane Bombardment or Mizzix's Mastery because you get extra copies. No, the extra copies do not trigger Ovika, but hey, I would happily take 3 copies of Hit the Motherlode or 3 copies of Brass's Bounty, even if I don't get goblins every time. And so it's like you sling out these spells, and then maybe work towards a way of getting them again, using them again, getting value for them again. Arcane Bombardment is still one of my favorite ways to push a game towards the end. You won't see it every game, and you won't see it all the time, but it's still a card I really love. And then as far as getting stuck in, Coat of Arms is the card that ends the most games I've seen. If I make 14 goblins in a turn, congratulations, now they're all 14/14s, and all I need to do is swing a couple of them into somebody and the right players at the right times to make the game really end. Surge to Victory is a card I absolutely love in this deck. Exile target instant or sorcery from your graveyard. Creature you control get +X/+0, where X is that card's mana value. Whenever a creature you control does combat damage to a player this turn, copy the exiled card. You can cast the copy without paying its mana cost. There's 2 really important pieces of text on this card. You do it when the spell resolves, meaning that when you cast Surge to Victory, Ovika's making you the 6 goblins before this resolves, meaning that at minimum you're going to have 6 goblins with this ability, but really in all reality you're going to have more than that. Let's say you pick a fun spell like Isengard Unleashed to the left of it. Now, or sorry, that's a bad example because that's a combat spell. Let's say you pick something like Nexus of Fate, or Tasha's Hideous Laughter, or any of these fun blue spells or red spells that deal damage, or Brass's Bounty, giving them all +7/+0. When they hit, we get a Brass's Bounty. I think you can very quickly start to understand how Surge of Victory can have massive upside, depending on what you pick and who you hit with. And with enough goblins, you're going to make sure they get through, deal that damage. Isengard Unleashed is another way to really get in for a good combat. Damage can't be prevented, and if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent, they deal triple that damage instead. Again, this pairs really well with something like Shared Animosity, which we're not talking about here, but it's in the deck as well, to just hit absolutely hard. City on Fire, same thing, plays really well with Shared Animosity because let's say I swing 5, 6 ones at you. Well, I may only need one of them to get through to really punish you for tough damage. As far as recent upgrades go, I feel like a bulk of the deck is there. The biggest thing I wanted in their most recent updates was Hell to Pay. Hell to Pay in this deck is X+1 goblins and the ability to deal X damage to target creature and make treasures equal to the excess. You have, in a deck where maybe you have enough spare mana, you just dump everything you want to into Hell to Pay. You get that many goblins, dome a creature for that much damage, and it's just pure profit. Like, I think it's a perfect card for Ovika and exactly what Ovika wants. Now, Ponder and Serum Visions, you could argue Ponder probably should have been in this deck from day one. But I realized that my deck didn't have enough of the early game ways to keep churning through the deck and finding the mana rocks and finding the draws and the treasures. So Serum Visions and Ponder came in as a better way to keep that early game going, not relying on too many things. The card that I think, as far as draw, that I really want to get rid of, because I like it, but I've seen it played into just situations where it gets countered, is something like Windfall. I love the idea of these attack people's hands effects and make everybody draw a fresh 7, but I think that Windfall might just come out for another draw spell. and just, allow us to get more early game stuff. So that way, as we build our way up the curve, maybe we take it out. I think I have both Mind Stone and Thought Vessel in, but maybe we find another two, a 2-mana rock or something like that, throw it in, and just try to, again, make sure we get Ovika out as quick as possible. I've said in all my episodes of Millsy Brews, and this show is no different. No deck is ever complete. In fact, the fun I get from decks is seeing how they progress over time. And these are a couple cards I want to really consider going forward. Now, for the record, one of them is not legal yet, and that's why I made the comment about Balmor, because I cannot wait to put Bria in this deck. But let's start with the other two cards first. Ferocity of the Wilds, I think, makes a ton of sense. Giving all non-human creatures we control +1/+0 and trample. This is great for the goblins, of course, because the bigger they get, this now gives them trample. But this also gives Ovika trample as well. Could be relevant against some decks. Arcane Heist just seems like a ton of fun. You cast it to cast a target instant sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that would be put into their graveyard, exile it instead. Then it says you may exile the spell card and code it on a creature. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, you may do it again. I love this probably on Ovika because it's just hard to deal with it having Ward 3 and Pay 3 life. But again, she almost always hits in pretty good. Get this, play somebody else's thing, get more value. But Bria is the thing I'm really excited about. Prowess, other creatures you control have prowess. So this is great. Remember that we can make the tokens on cast, and Bria won't be able to be gamed like Balmor. Balmor we can actually better game because it's putting the prowess on the creature, whereas Balmor's triggers on it, meaning the way we can stack our triggers, we can actually get those new goblins in before Balmor's effect goes off. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. This is important because if we have a big board of gobos out with a coat of arms or shared animosity, now we know those are going to automatically get through, and with enough goblins, all we need is one or two to get through unblockable to potentially knock someone out or really change a game. But let's get into the playtests. Again, the goal is to get to 7. Ovika is 7, so that's our goal. And let's talk about a 3-lander with Mind Stone. Makes a ton of sense. Now we just got to get a little bit more in our draws. We've been Snared by the Mara, a fun card I probably won't use in the playtest because it's going to be hard to show off, but it's a great card that can kind of use our opponent's stuff. Nexus of Fate for some extra turns, and then Brass's Bounty. So great things to top end. Well, we see a Commander Spear. We'll take it. Turn 2, we'll get this Mind Stone out. Nothing we can do quite yet, but we're definitely working our way up here. I'd probably get this tap land in and get that Commander Spear down. So now we're at 5. We're just 1 mana off, or 1 turn off Ovika. So this is a turn 4, 6 mana. So we're just 1 mana off Ovika. Here I mean, you could think about ensnaring the Mara here, but I think I would probably just, well, it could be interesting, right? You could get some free things off your opponents. You could not. I guess I could bluff something here, but the whole reality is the next turn we play the 7th, we play the land and we drop Ovika, right? Now the idea of our strategy is online. Now this next turn, we have a couple choices. We play our land here right up to 8 mana. We can do a couple things. This worked out really well because we can actually Chandra into Ensnared by the Mara, 6, and then she gives us 2 mana on the +2, and we would actually get another copy of Ensnared by the Mara because of his ability. We could just Nexus of Fate this turn and do that next turn, getting 7 gobos this turn, getting the Chandra and then the Ensnared by the Mara on our second, on our turn. We could, Brass's Bounty this turn if we want, but I like the idea of getting Chandra in. Set her counters to 5. You would +2, getting 2, I guess, red mana, and start by the Mara, and we get a copy of it because it says when you cast an instant sorcery, copy it. You may choose new targets to the copy. It only happens once per turn. So basically, we would still get the 6 tokens from Chandra, the 6 gobos from Chandra, and we would we'll just do it this way. And then we would get the 4 goblins from the Ensnared by the Mara. Now, we don't get it from the copy, but that's okay. And again, the point is here, we tell our opponents, look, you either exile the cards from the top until you hit a non-land card, and I get to play that for free, meaning I'm getting more goblins, or you're going to nuke the top 4 and take damage. Now, your opponents should be smart enough, I would hope, to take the damage, or maybe they don't. But the point is, now we're just profiting at this point. If people let us take things, we get more goblins. If people don't let us take things and just deal damage, cool, that's the less damage we have to do. We have 10/1/1 goblins with haste this turn. Ovika swings at somebody. The goblins might get in if we can. And then next turn, we probably just Nexus Fate getting copied from Chandra, and now we're probably way ahead at that point on value, and we're pretty far down the way to, winning the game unless somebody has big interaction. 6-lander, which is very odd for this deck, but a Serum Visions, which could be fun. Turn 1, I get down that command tower and get that Serum Visions rocking, so we're going to draw a card, and then scry 2. We scry an enchanted... a Decanter of Endless Water and Coat of Arms, and I absolutely want both of them. I'll happily keep them both on top. Turn 2, just get another land down again. Nothing we're going to do turn anyway. Turn 3, get a land down, and we have two choices. We can either Decanter, or we can Seize the Spoils this turn, which would get us up to 5 mana, 6 mana next turn with the land. We could just Decanter this turn and then Seize next turn. We kind of have that option. I would probably just Decanter here, get the extra mana. Now this turn, 4/5. This is the turn I would Seize the Spoils, probably pitching the island and drawing 2. Oh, it's 1 treasure. I apologize, not 2. So maybe we should have kept the land. But oh well, we're out here now. So now we're up to, we're up to 6. And now next turn playing the Reliquary Tower, again, would get us to 7. Now we cast Ovika and we're off to the races as far as our ability goes. What I liked about that Serum Visions was it gave me Coat of Arms, a card that's definitely going to be one of our endgame win cons. So here, turn 6, Fiery Islet, we have 8 mana. Sorry, we used that treasure to cast Ovika. I would probably just go Arcane Signet into Coat of Arms. This gives us 7 Phyrexian Goblins with haste, right? Remember, because of Ovika's ability. So that means that these are now 6/6s, or 7/7s, right? So now that's a massive threat to our opponents. And actually, I apologize, they're 8/8s because Ovika's a Phyrexian. I always forget about that. And now we take a run at somebody or split them out. Now our opponents are in trouble. And literally this turn, we slam something like Shared Animosity and maybe the Imara. And now the game's probably over because now we're getting a couple more, 7 more, right? But now they get the Shared Animosity, meaning that as long as they all attack, now they're getting that +1/+0 more. And now I think at this point, you're just showing we're just probably overrunning the board with goblins. And this is what I think I like about the deck, is it can be a spell-slinging deck, but at the end of the day, it can also just be a go-wide tokens deck. But I don't know, what do you think of Ovika down in the comment section below? This is a deck I truly love. It's a deck I really enjoy. And I can't wait to play with it some more as I continue to test through it. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.